screen now. Um, so I think part of the problem right now, especially in the day of pandemics, pandemic, with COVID-19, there's a lot of disaster recovery that people who are actually experiencing, companies, organizations, even the states, right, in national organizations that are uh, their preparedness for something like this is being tested, right? Do we have or did we see this coming? Do we have a plan in place that enable us to navigate through these times? And so the only way to do this is to have the ability to have seen it, what's coming. So have a model that help you understand when something like this happens, how can you react, and what are the priorities in your organization to actually make a recovery and do it faster and in a way that it doesn't waste your resources, whether it's money, people, or anything else, right? Materials, anything that is required. Um, some of the things that we have seen in years of interacting with customers using AI and prediction machines, anything from analytics to machine learning, is that a lot of the things that they are trying to do is either enter in a new market or disrupt the market or expand what they're doing, with their products and services. And so when it comes down to being prepared for an emergency, it's a little bit of a just how do we keep the business running? How do we keep the organization moving forward? And it's hard, to understand how something like AI sometimes can help you. And there are multiple stages where AI can help from the moment of creating the models for the disaster to happen to actually executing, the actual steps that you have to prevent the organization from stopping and producing what they need to do. So some of the things I wanted to talk about is that the history repeats itself, right? So we're living in times of a pandemic. In 1920, 18 was another pandemic. 17, 20 was another pandemic. Almost every 100 years we experiencing these pandemics, and so history repeats. Regarding the technology is pretty similar. In the 1990s, the World War I was created, and there's been events that every certain amount of years, some new breakthroughs are coming, right? And so anything from the creation of the web to cell towers, cell phones, creating a new type of bandwidth for data. It started happening in the late 2000s to the cloud, right? And in the 2010, 2012, when AI started to become something that was more useful and more, what is AI, machine learning, all the different technologies associated with it, were talked about in the 90s, right? And it's sometimes in the 80s. But the breakthrough didn't start happening until this decade, right? And so that repeating of the history that's happened throughout ages, whether it's pandemics, whether it's technology breakthroughs, is kind of mirroring, right? And so nowadays, companies and organizations are using this type of technology, like the internet was used in the early 90s, and people are jumping in this bandwagon. So something that goes hand in hand these days with AI is usually IoT, because it's the ability to connect the real analog world, the sensors on the analog world with the digital world. And so part of a disaster recovery plan should include these type of technologies, right? Whether it's AI, whether it's IoT, to enable companies to be able to break through these issues created by pandemics or any disasters. I live in an area in the United States where we're very prone to hurricanes, and almost every year or every other year we have very strong storms, and we have customers that they have a lot of disruption due to that. So part of what I wanted to have a discussion about, not a presentation, is how is AI used in your particular areas? Katrina, you were talking about your company, your startup. How do you guys are using AI, or where do you see AI fitting in preventing, or disaster recovery efforts when something like this happens? We don't get affected because we're a company that works in software, so we're remote, but we have a lot of customers who are analog, right? They either produce electricity, make ice cream, they have, shipping companies. They all have analog and real world physical world items that require the necessity to continue operating, but the software and the data is very important to them in order to operate. How is this affecting you guys in your different parts of the world? And how do you see AI, benefiting this your particular companies, enterprises, or communities?
So I see that no one is answering your question, so I thought that I'm legitimized to continue a discussion.
Sure.
Well, for my startup, it is extremely important that every single deal's parameter is recorded by the system, so that once someone opens the deal and closes it successfully, the system records that this guy performed well or he performed awful, so that like no one would actually pretend to be a successful trader without being so. My system needs to record every single deal. So I suppose that it would be big data, and the system must analyze the records in this databases. So I suppose that instead of doing this manually, AI solution would cope with this amount of statistical performance of users better than human being.
So reliability in probably is a high reliability and integrity of transaction is very important, I guess, in your business. And how high of a volume do you get on your transactions? Is it pretty high volume?
Well, according to my estimations, like by the end of the first year, there would be millions of transactions on the system. And like as a startup, I cannot afford recording every single parameter on the blockchain. It wouldn't just analyze it. Well, though EOS community supported the whole thing, but like technically, I'm just thinking how can I connect everything in this system? Like,
yeah, I think the transaction, especially with blockchain, because of the performance issues with blockchain, you're right, you can't record every parameter. You're going to have a separate system that that analyzes all the associated parameters with the transaction, and that you could use AI in that to analyze that amount of data to validate whether the transaction is valid or not, right?
Yeah, but I suppose that the price of such solution on the market would be like pretty high, I suppose. Like, could you kindly say me the probable range of prices for such kind of implementation?
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to estimate without understanding the details, but what I can tell you is this: there are so many open source solutions out there. It's a matter of creating the right environment for, understand what data you need to look at, how many variables are in each transaction. But there's so many products out there that are open source, that are made exactly for doing analytics on very big data, right? I mean, a lot of them. And so I don't think it's uncommon. I think what's common to it is the usage, is the fact that the analysis of that data would be on blockchain data. That's what's very unique to it. But right now, one of our customers does process one of the largest credit card processing companies in Latin America, and they do a lot of analysis on fraud detection for all the transactions, because as you know, credit card transaction is a very high probability of getting fraud. And so they are doing a lot of analysis on big lakes of data of the transactions that each customer does and the locations. I mean, it's based on multiple things, based on the merchant, the point of entry of the transaction, the dates, the history of the purchases of the actual credit card user. So there's so many points that they're analyzing, and I mean, you're talking about millions of transactions, tens of millions of transactions per day, per country. And so it's this is not an uncommon scenario. I think what's very uncommon is that it's being used to analyze blockchain data, right? That's what makes it very unique. It's pretty interesting use case, Katerina.
Yeah, thank you. Because like personally, as a trader who just started their careers, people are facing this problem of just whom to trust to copy their strategies, because like that's the problem here. Like you never know who is the trustworthy source of information, because so many scammers just pretending to be successful, riding Lamborghinis and the social media, but actually just taking the money, the hard-earned dollars, like last pennies.
Yeah. So what kind of trade are you talking about? Trading stock, or are you talking about trading commodities? What is the type of trade that is happening?
Yeah, it's crypto trading and stocks trading, and plus betting. So it means that there would be three types of data to be analyzed, and
Yeah.
I think that like I need a proper software architect who would actually connect the dots there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're doing, those are very three different patterns, right, of transactions, right? Betting is a completely different behavior than you would do on cryptocurrency. I mean, there are some similarities, but it's the behaviors are very different. So that's interesting. Where are you based, Katerina?
I'm currently in Ukraine, but the startup is domiciled in Luxembourg House of Financial Technology.
Great, great. Yeah, we don't work for companies that do something with but it's not on financial markets. Most of the blockchain that we've done is associated with IoT and physical transactions, like containers and shipping containers being connected from one point to another for delivery and validating that every step of the supply chain, the transaction is validated by all the parties. But it's a lot slower. The volume is not as high as the one that you were going to experience on trades. So I mean, this is the conversation is around this, right? So how AI can be used. So the examples that I have on, from our experience are associated with these things. Like we have a customer that uses weather alerts and historical data analysis to determine where to put, for example, during hurricane season here in the southeast United States, how to place the correct data backup systems, because they make ice cream, right? And so they're third largest ice cream manufacturer in the United States. And what they do is when there's a hurricane, if they lose power, every facility has over $1 million worth of ice cream. So it's very, I don't know if any of you have been in the southeast United States, but it's very hot and humid. And if the hurricanes happen around the summertime, so it's the hottest time of the year. If you lose power, it's not easy to have backup power for every single facility. So what they do is they use analytics with AI and machine learning algorithms that helps them determine, based on weather data and based on the location of the hurricane, where to send the trucks, so that the trucks are always within 6 to 8 hours for the location, so they can actually and not lose ice cream, $1 million worth of ice cream in every location because they have very limited amounts of trucks. Another example of AI in these times of disruption is we have a customer that has they create power. They're a power generator, and one of the things they do is they have boilers that generate power. These boilers, whenever they're fail in the middle of a critical production time, like 7 p.m., for example, they lose a lot of money by not being able to produce that energy, electrical power, because the grid now takes power from somebody else. And so what they do is they use the predictive analytics to actually determine when a boiler is going to fail in a window of about a week or two, and they bring the boiler down within in hours that are not peak, when those boilers are not required, and they fix or maintain during those hours, and that helps them not to lose revenue, right? Another example, it's we have customers that use IoT data to measure consumption, power consumption, temperature and humidity internal, and temperature, humidity in the environment, to be able to analyze and predict, generate a model of consumption of power for the next year, so they can actually do switch providers, because they consume so much electrical power that switching providers with plans that fit them better every year can save them, tens of thousands of dollars a year in just in power and consumption alone. So those are the examples that we use with AI for disrupting events, kind of like
Could you
disaster.
kindly also share this slide with what you've built content? That's very interesting, because like you told how it can be used, but like is it like this technical scheme?
You're talking about like you mean like this our architecture?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is one of the solutions that we have built. This solution is a little more on the IoT side. It does use alert management, rules manager, and machine learning to do deterministic and predictive analysis, right? This is a product that we created, we call Moonshot, and it's a platform that connects data coming from third parties or sensors, and using some IoT products. And and I'm not doing an advertising for IBM. It's just this is what we work with. We work with other companies too, and then we use their products. We use their IoT Foundation, Cloudon, which is a database that takes it's made for big data. Some analytics, data warehouse products from IBM. We use something called IBM Message Hub. That is basically what it does is a big data hub that enables to generate a big flow of transactions. And then and we use IBM Watson Analytics to generate some predictions. This is the IBM portion, and then the portion that we do is the the the, the, the real-time data, that comes from sensors. We integrate this into our alert manager, so we are able to generate rules. Like, for example, I was telling you about this customer that does ice cream, right? That we generate rules for them to say, within the next week, you need to have in this part of the country this many number of extra power units, so that when the power goes down on that area, you actually are able to recover power within a few hours and not within days, right? Because that will cost them a lot of money. Rules manager allow them to enter what are the rules that they want to generate the specific alerts and triggers. They have a dashboard that looks very kind of like this, that for cold chain, that enable them to keep track of different buildings, different facilities. Kind of looks like this for oil and gas, because we have done some work for them as well. Weather data integrated with it, so decision can be automated. That's the type of thing that we have built using this type of architecture. What kind of if you're interested more on the technical side, again, we're talking about all sorts of anything from Apache, Apache products, on the open source side to IBM and cloud, AWS. There's so many products that enable us to integrate this architecture to deliver predictive analytics and this automated decision making.
I'm sorry, it seems like I'm not very aware of what is edge computing. I'm sorry for this
Oh, that's
question,
all
but
right.
like, could
No,
you
that's okay. That's easy. Edge
explain?
computing is there is a lot of use cases where the decision that you want to make based on analytics is done offline. So there are some, for example, plant water treatments that we work with that the cellular networks don't really work well there. So what we do is we're gathering data uh, locally, right, in a local database for doing analytics. And so what we do is when a technician goes into that plant, they bring like a mobile device and they connect their mobile device wirelessly to the local data store, and they sync that data that every 2 weeks, once a month. And then when they get back into an area with cellular coverage, the data gets synchronized back with the main cloud computing engine. And so that data is up to date, right? And so it's called edge, meaning that it's not done on a centralized place. It's actually done outside of the periphery of the architecture. And so it's done offline. So that's
So
the,
can we then consider that recording the database footprint can be like something like edge computing process?
if it is not connected to your central repository where the decision making is, it is edge. But if it is connected to it, then it's not. For example, what would be edge in your case is if you happen to have one of your databases it's at a customer's base, right, and is not connected to the cloud because of security, then that's kind of isolated, is by itself. How do you connect that now is in the edge, right? Because it's no longer connected to your main decision engine, right? And so you will have to figure out a way to synchronize the data that is basically offline. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it makes sense in understanding how the decentralization would work like in this type of solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that my time is getting up in 3 minutes. I don't know if anybody else had any comments, questions. I appreciate everybody's time. Katerina, it's a pleasure that have you participating on the chat as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being there. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to your LinkedIn request and love to connect as well.
In order to connect with you, I must to know your email. So could you please show the slide with your contact details?
Yes, absolutely. My email is right there. It's this one right here.
Well recorded. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ian. It's been really interesting.
Appreciate it.
And it's been interesting